Well, here we are again. Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have what I think is a pretty decent show for you today. Wouldn't have it any other way. I'm joined by Niall Stanich. I'm just trying to come up with different things to say.
It's a fantastic show, Robby. A fantastic bright show on a dull, rainy morning.
I overused the word fantastic, I've decided.
Terrific. We'll find something.
There we go.
Yeah, we need to hype ourselves up a little bit.
Get hyped.
But after the hype, we have your radar. So what is on your radar today, Robby?
Hopefully it's not too much of a come down. President Donald Trump and his diplomatic team have achieved, actually, a great success yesterday. This is, in fact, something to celebrate, with the release of the final U.S. hostage held in Gaza by the terrorist group Hamas. Edan Alexander was finally reunited with his family after 19 months in captivity. He holds joint U.S.-Israeli citizenship and was serving in the Israeli army at the time of his capture. Here is some footage of him seeing his mother for the first time in a year and a half.
Yo, yeah! Ay, 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 ay. Eso pasante tanto muerto, todo paisano. Yo, pamatag, no.
So this is obviously a long overdue outcome that is nevertheless something to celebrate. Specifically, it's a credit to the Trump administration that they were able to bring Edan home. And the reason they achieved this? Well, it's because Hamas signaled a willingness to negotiate directly with the Trump team, specifically Steve Witkoff, who is achieving success where others have failed. That's the story here. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu broke the ceasefire with Hamas, reinvaded Gaza, and has been unwilling to hold ceasefire and hostage negotiation talks because he wants to reserve the right to attack Gaza again after the hostages are released. But Netanyahu's stance doesn't sit with Trump, who's much more inclined to get some kind of deal that does bring more hostages home immediately. Edan Alexander was the last living U.S. hostage, but Hamas still holds other Israeli hostages and also has the remains of deceased hostages, both Israeli and American. This is as good a point as any to remind everyone watching that Hamas is a brutal terrorist group. It killed men, women, and children on October 7th. Hamas's reign of terror is a humanitarian catastrophe for Israel and for Gaza, and in an ideal world, they would be swept from power by any means necessary. But in reality, Israel's efforts to destroy Hamas have resulted in widespread death and destruction for the civilian population of Gaza, tens of thousands of men and women and children. Because Hamas is embedded within the civilian population, it is a difficult issue to be resolved. Israel rationally doesn't want to let a terrorist group continue to occupy the neighboring territory, yet at the same time, the cost of this war to the people of Gaza is clearly far too high a price to pay. That is where Trump comes in. The Biden administration was pathologically unwilling to put any constraints on the behavior of Netanyahu's government, and when seeking the presidency herself, Vice President Kamala Harris didn't separate herself from her boss's policy at all. And so the slaughter continued. Trump, however, immediately used the U.S.'s considerable leverage over Israel to force a ceasefire deal. Now, it's a shame the deal didn't last. Now, Trump is willing to have his team engage through intermediaries with Hamas in order to protect and rescue Americans. And Israel is taking note of that. Given the news of Edan Alexander's release, Netanyahu has said he would once again send a diplomatic team to Doha, the capital city of Qatar, for ceasefire talks. Qatar has, of course, played an important role in all of this, which is perhaps why the Qataris' gift of a jumbo jet to Donald Trump yesterday raised eyebrows among so many in the media, even many Republicans. Weird flex, yes. But the most important thing is peace. Peace in the Middle East, peace all over the world. Trump is a heck of a lot closer to achieving that than Joe Biden ever was. Don't just take it from me. Even progressives are waking up to that reality. Progressive writer Jeet Heer of The Nation magazine writes, well, it's the lowest of low bars, but Trump is doing more to rein in Israel than Biden ever did. This should spark introspection among Democrats, but it won't. And even Mehdi Hasan, an arch progressive, one of the most outspoken Trump haters I can think of, he admitted on X, the Democrats uselessly and cravenly and self-destructively bowed down to Netanyahu and cleared the ground for Trump to do what they could have done, but chose not to. Pathetic from the Biden administration, pathetic. A big win for Trump. To be sure, not everyone in the MAGA coalition is dedicated to non-interventionism. Witkoff himself is taking flack from people like Mark Levin and other neocons who would rather escalate tensions with Iran. But Witkoff has the firm backing of Trump and of Vice President J.D. Vance, who writes on X, Steve Witkoff is a great guy doing an incredible job. The people sniping at him are mad. He is succeeding where they failed for 40 years. Turns out a lot of diplomacy boils down to a simple skill. Don't be an idiot. Wise words to live by as we all work toward peace.
Interesting stuff, Robbie. I agree with a good part of that. I am very much aligned with the views that people like GTR and Mehdi Hassan put forward there. When it comes to the situation in Gaza, I have never put forth a partisan position. I think that Biden's conduct was disgraceful in that regard. One can acknowledge the horrors of October 7th and still be vigorously critical, to say the very least, of the Israeli response, which I think has been an absolute slaughter, which I think is the word you used, and it needs to be brought to an end. So in terms of, acknowledging certain elements in this, yes, the push toward a ceasefire deal originally is worth acknowledging. Yes, the fact that Trump did essentially an end run around the Israelis to get Edan Alexander released, that's definitely worth acknowledging. I think where I probably have differ from a little bit from what you put forth is, if I'm understanding correctly, you are putting this in a narrative of Trump really wanting peace or having some sort of principled structure to do that. And I'm very skeptical that he does. I think that when you look at his conduct in that part of the world, or his policies in that part of the world, there's a lot that cuts against that. There will be a lasting peace in Gaza and in Palestine whenever there is a just settlement reached. And I don't see really any evidence that Donald Trump is going to pursue such a settlement. There is his backing for ethnic cleansing. He wouldn't use that word, but I would, for the removal of Palestinians. There is the fact that he has not really put any check on Israel, as it has choked off the supplies of food and aid into Gaza. There's the fact that it's really not clear whether he believes that the West Bank is occupied, which indeed it is under international law. Someone like Mike Huckabee, his ambassador, blatantly does not believe that, thinks it's part of Greater Israel. So I think I differ from you in not thinking that Trump has a constructive policy toward that part of the world. But it's good that this guy was released, and it's good that he is more willing than Biden has been to break with Netanyahu.
Yeah, and I'm welcome to concede that there's some ideological inconsistency to the Trump approach to foreign policy and the Middle East. It's just even inconsistency is better than consistent what I disagree with. And I am hopeful and heartened by, if J.D. Vance is actually the successor to Donald Trump, there will be aspects of J.D. Vance that I like less than Donald Trump. He's more consistently hostile to some of the market principles I think are very important. He's probably even more a believer in tariffs than Donald Trump is. However, when it comes to foreign policy, I do think he has his principles overlap with mine. And when we see, behind the scenes into how he thinks, like we got to see in those text messages, I saw someone who's actually speaking for a non-interventionist philosophy, not just a kind of convenient, well, this looks bad, let's try to cut a deal, but someone who actually believes that the U.S. should have less of a presence in the U.S. That's why he's defending Witkoff here, signaling he's on the Witkoff side during the Mark Levin feud, and I think that's a good thing, and I hope something positive comes from this. It's a difficult situation. We will always remain very supportive of Israel. There would be too clear a cost for either party to pay politically to turn its back on Israel. I don't think that would be good policy, but what level of support we give, and even this is what was so historically unprecedented about Biden specifically with respect to the Israeli government. Even past Republican and Democratic administrations totally supportive of Israel. But that doesn't mean we didn't exert any pressure on them when Reagan did, the first Bush did, Clinton did, Obama did. They all said, okay, we support you fully. Take out terrorists. But you can't start World War III here. We're not going to let you do that.
Sure.
And Biden just didn't do that.
He did not do that. And we would have much more to say about that, and I'm sure we will in future shows. But coming up on Rising, was former President Biden headed for a wheelchair in his second term? His aides are speaking out in a new book. That's next.